So what is Koinos? If you're clicking on this video, then you have heard of the Koinos blockchain, or you just recently heard of it and you're trying to learn more about it. At the time of this video's creation, there's not a whole lot of information out there about Koinos. There's some Telegram channels, a Discord channel, a couple of video releases, and the white paper. All those kind of start creating this picture of what Koinos is, and I am a token holder for Koinos, and I'm just trying to understand that network a little better. So I'm trying to piece together all this information together so that other people who have the same questions and concerns that I do have some way to kind of say, hey, I'm looking at it from the same viewpoint as you and I think you're right, or I have a totally different viewpoint as you and I think you're wrong. But eventually, because the network is being created right now, we have a lot of power over what we want out of this blockchain, because Koinos is being developed as this general purpose blockchain that can do a lot of things through the execution of smart contracts. These former Steam developers, they've got a certain idea about what succeeded and what failed in the Steam blockchain. And they're taking that concept and they're really trying to develop a brand new blockchain that addresses all of the successes and the failures, capitalizing on things that worked and kind of rejecting and rebuilding the things that failed. So what's interesting is that their approach kind of tackles the two big problems in blockchains right now. And that really is about the scalability of the blockchain and the cost of running a blockchain. It's also about things that belong on the blockchain and things that shouldn't belong on the blockchain. 2021 is going to be a very interesting year for blockchain tech. This video is not about talking about when Koinos is going to moon. We're not really talking about money and finances. What we're really talking about is this convergent technology and what we need from blockchain tech now in order to move on and progress in this blockchain space. I guess the big question is, we're trying to answer what is Koinos. Koinos is not Ethereum. It's not Ethereum but faster. It's not Ethereum but better. It's really its own thing, and ETH is going to grow into ETH 2.0 and try to tackle some of the same problems that Koinos will be tackling. And Polkadot, which is another very popular blockchain that was recently released this year, they're all trying to tackle the same problem, but the approach is vastly different, and I think there's going to be enough space for all three to exist. But I want to talk about specifically how Koinos is going to address these issues separately, or rather differently than the other two tokens are now. So when we talk about Koinos, we're talking about a general purpose blockchain. It's not a specific blockchain meant to do one specific thing. It's really to allow other people to create their own blockchains and operate on a blockchain for their business use cases. Ethereum really showed that smart contracts could really be leveraged to develop a new paradigm of businesses in today's age. But there's a lot of shortcomings to Ethereum, and that's why we're seeing the ETH 2.0 upgrade. So one of the principal things that new and modern general purpose blockchains need to address is increased speed and decreased cost. Should we have fast and feeless transactions? The answer in Koinos is yes. I think that they have the right approach to this. Almost every application out there that we use on a normal basis, be it Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, they're all free to use. But there's underlying mechanics behind it that actually allow the creators to operate with some type of funding, right? So Koinos is definitely going to be taking the right approach in creating an environment that's going to be largely free for users to access. One of the big things I think that's going to be really mind-blowing for Koinos is the fact that there's going to be feeless smart contract executions. That is the linchpin of why ETH can't grow right now. Their smart contracts actually cost money to deploy. So for every line of code, there is a certain gas price along with it. So the larger your smart contract is, the more complicated it is, the more expensive it is to launch. Now, it makes sense in the original architecture environment of when ETH was developed that they would have to charge some fee to create this network. But as we start approaching this mainstream use of blockchain, we're definitely going to have to reduce the cost somehow. And I think the model of running, charging per line of code operation is going to be out the door. It's just not going to exist anymore. But that means that we have to find other ways of, covering the cost of contract execution. One of the most useful things I feel like Koinos is tackling is the fact that they have this concept where block production should not be tied to governance on the chain. So block producers should have one job, and their job is to produce blocks. Who cares what they actually think? And by separating those two things out, I feel like you are now separating some of the value of block production to the value of the token, to the blockchain itself. When they're tied together, you get these crazy effects where the block producer is really trying to control the blockchain in order to maximize their benefit. If you start pulling out block production from governance, right? The people who govern the blockchain are going to create the rules that make the blockchain more effective, whereas the block producers do nothing but get paid to make blocks. Why should a block producer hold the entire network, basically hold it hostage for their own benefit? And I think that separation in governance is going to be really important in Koinos' development. Another thing that I think Koinos is going to be really strong capitalizing on is in-band upgradability, which really means that you can upgrade the blockchain without having to hard fork. Now, going back to the whole Steam developers, they were able to maintain the Steam blockchain, and I think they hard forked nearly 19 or 21 times without separating the entire community in half. But the reality is that if you did not need to hard fork, Steam would have probably upgraded much faster, and ETH would have upgraded much faster. But because of the need for hard forks, upgrading tends to be really slow because you have to get everybody coordinated. Polkadot's also providing some in-band upgrade capability, but the way that Koinos is doing it is very unique. Koinos is going to be allowing upgrades because everything on the Koinos blockchain is going to be done through a smart contract. So all you really have to do is deploy a new smart contract. I know it's kind of simple in concept and it's a little more complicated in execution, but as we get more and more information about the actual blockchain itself, we'll start talking more about how it's actually going to be executed. The most important thing that I think that Koinos is going to provide is giving people a low barrier to entry. They're going to be able to use a blockchain if they choose so to basically bootstrap their business, both financially and mechanically. And that's going to be a very powerful tool to allow business to start building on blockchains. So we've got 3 blockchains that are approaching this problem with the general blockchain space, right? We've got ETH 2.0, which realistically isn't even a point of discussion because ETH 2.0 has an unlimited date to execution. Right now, they're in phase, I think, 1.1. So when will ETH 2.0 actually come out? Probably not in 2021. Polkadot is a very, very interesting blockchain that was released on the testnet this year. And a lot of people are going to be talking about Polkadot and how they're going to be the end-all, be-all for general-purpose blockchains. Now, granted, I think that Koinos is going to provide every service that Polkadot can provide in a completely different way. So it's going to be a very neck-to-neck comparison, but the execution is going to be totally different. Important thing to note, though, is that between ETH, Koinos, and Polkadot, I think there's space for all 3 of them, and it's going to be basically, hey, do you want Android or do you want Mac or really iPhone these days? And I guess the third-party guy would be a Windows Phone, which is now defunct. But you're really going to be able to select which blockchain you want to use, and I think the market is going to decide, really the developer's going to decide who's going to be the best. But I just think there's enough space for everyone. So with that said, let's do a couple comparisons between Polkadot and Koinos, just because there's more information on Polkadot, and I think the offerings are generally the same. So we're going to do a little bit of a compare and contrast about the differences between the two. So Polkadot is running multiple blockchains. So Polkadot looks at the expansion of information being stored on a blockchain, and they ask, how can we get this information over a larger area? And their answer to that is to shard the information onto other blockchains. So there are now hundreds of parachains or parallel chains working in tandem with the main relay chain to store this information. That is their approach to reducing the bloat on the main chain. In Koinos, there's only one chain. One blockchain, that's it. And that one blockchain is going to be powering all of the information on the Koinos network. Now, Koinos looks at this and they ask a totally different question, right? Their question is, why does information need to live on a blockchain once it's done its job? A lot of this has to do with their views on what succeeded and what failed on the Steam blockchain. Their approach is, we're going to instead allow you to operate in the blockchain space, do what work you need to do, and then get it out of there, right? That's called state paging. Get the information out. But you got to do it in a way where you can bring the information back into blockchain when you need to, and it has to be done so in a way that it can't be modified, right? So I think that's a difficulty in Koinos, and just verifying that the state can come back in, unchanged. In Polkadot, on the other hand, that there's a different security risk. That security risk is, how do you spread information over multiple chains? I mean, there's copies of the same piece of information on multiple parachains, so that if one parachain goes down, the information can still be accessed on another parachain. And And the way to do it is by randomly selecting another parachain to pick up the same information on another parachain. So there's two states, and there's basically a backup to information on one chain and a backup piece of information on another chain. So again, two different approaches to the same problem. At the end of the day, you're going to get the same result, but the reality is that the cost is going to be different, and the developers who develop on each blockchain is going to be the people who have the ultimate say in what's the best blockchain out there. Another very important thing, to me at least, and this is not a knock on Polkadot, but Polkadot took about 3 years to get released in testnet phase. And I think part of that issue was that 3 years ago, we just didn't have the same information to work on as we do now. On top of that, in order to make like hundreds of parachains communicate with the relay chain, it takes a lot of engineering work to do. So it's wildly complicated, and the reality is that it took a long time to get here. So for that chain to be truly understood takes a lot of time. Koinos' approach to that is by making everything on a smart contract. So because they can put everything on a smart contract, when the Koinos testnet gets released, you're going to find that the Koinos testnet is rather bare bones, because it only needs to do things that blockchains need to do, right? It only needs to be able to understand transactions and verify them. It has a ledger to keep track of the state of the system. It recognizes users, wallets. That's generally about it. Everything else can be put on a smart contract. And because smart contracts are going to be feeless to execute, you can build as many smart contracts to support whatever network you want to. And I think that's a very beautiful thing about Koinos. And it's drastically different from the approach that Polkadot is trying to achieve. But I think the end result is that if a developer wants to develop on Polkadot or on the new Koinos network, they're going to achieve the same results, but it's just going to be done differently. Current status of the blockchain. In October, Koinos launched with mining, proof of work mining. They launched as the ERC20 token on the Ethereum network. And the way that you were able to get the token was to basically download their GUI miner or their command line interface miner, the CLI miner. And you were able to use your CPU's compute power to mine the token. It worked for the first 2 days, but quickly people caught on, miners caught on, and these mining farms started, basically overpowering the entire network. There's a lot to be said on how the tokens actually get distributed based on compute power, but ultimately, most people find it that it's just too expensive for them to mine the token on their own personal computer. I'm getting I've got an i7 generation 8 CPU. I'm getting about I think 70 tokens per proof submission. I don't want to get into the complexity of that, but the fees on Ethereum for executing the mining smart contract was just too high. So these mining farms basically came in and they're mining tons of coins, 30,000 coins per proof submission. And that's allowing them to basically offload these tokens on a decentralized exchange such as Uniswap for relatively cheap. And right now we're seeing the price of a token to be about 1 to 1.5 cents per token. And certainly if you mine it yourself, you're looking at almost 5-6 cents a token. So a lot of people are just buying the token outright on Uniswap. There's a lot of political things going on with that, and I really want to address that in a separate video. So stay tuned for that one. Development news right now is being released on a weekly to bi-weekly basis by the CEO. You can find a lot of this on YouTube, on Telegram, on Discord. All those links are going to be below. And, a lot of information is kind of technical, not really, but they're very compartmentalized in the information they deliver. And really the purpose of the videos that I want to make here are to kind of take all information and try to understand how this ecosystem really works. So that's the end of this video. Below this, you're going to get the Telegram link. You're going to get the Discord link. You can go into those areas. You can talk to other people who are interested in this project. And you can ask questions and basically get up-to-date information from the team because they release directly on the Discord channel.